Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
How are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm well, thank you. I'm
My
well.
hair's getting
Hope everybody
long.
else is doing well. What's that?
I said your hair's getting long.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? It feels long, but it's not that long. It's so funny. But I'm loving it because it feels long, but I don't have to do a bunch of stuff to it. So
Perfect.
anyway, and it was tricky too. I was wearing it curly for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so when it curls, it looks shorter. So anyway, I hope everybody had a great weekend. If you're here I know you're here. I can see that there are people here. But if you'll drop your name or where you're tuning in from in the chat, that would be great. It's a little bit dreary here, but the temperature is beautiful. So I'm not upset about that. Yeah. Did you have a good weather weekend?
Yeah, we did. Actually, yesterday I was out and I cut we have trees that go down the one side of our driveway. So I trimmed all of it back yesterday. My arms are like, why did you do that? The weather was good, and this is the first year that I've remembered to do it before the leaves grow. So definitely
nice.
easier.
Right. I love it.
But spring is funny. Wednesday it's gonna be like a high of 51 and a low of I think like 38 here, and then Thursday's a high of 81.
Nice. Yeah, it's time. It's time for it to kind of be drifting in that area.
Bipolar.
So I love it. Yes, exactly. Well, welcome to Mindset Monday, where independent patient advocates gather together to kickstart our week with positivity and inspiration. My name is Nicole Broadhurst, and I'm here with my co-host, Kayla Thompson-Riviere. And today we are focusing on perseverance, resilience, and adaptability. And we have a really good quote to kind of guide us through. Well, maybe. I don't know. Kayla, why don't you tell us about the quote for a minute?
So our quote for today comes to us from Nelson Mandela, who I'm sure we're all at least somewhat familiar with, and is, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again."
Love this. Kind of. I don't know, Kayla. I was thinking about how 2 weeks in a row we have this word that bothers me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to not be affected by it, but I am a little bit, especially since it's 2 weeks in a row. So the word is judge. I really don't like this word. It really,
yeah, honestly, I don't feel like, so my interpretation of the quote, I don't feel like judge is the best word to pick. It's not the best vehicle for what I believe he was trying to convey. But I do see this as if we look at the word judge as just to take a situation and make it mean something, that's kind of my takeaway here. So and where I'm going with this. So do not judge me by my success, meaning don't appraise my value based on my success, but appraise my intrinsic value or the value of my work based on how many times I fell down and got back up again. Yeah. And that still isn't quite hitting the nail on the head because everybody has value regardless of their work. Right. That wasn't where I was going with that. I'm just trying to find a better, but that's where I think he was coming from with the word judge. It's judgment in that way, not the negative sense, but the actual truest sense of the word, of where you're just trying to judge where something fits on a spectrum or a continuum or a category, something like that. I wonder if, how in other languages there's multiple words for the thing that we use one word in English.
I wonder if this is one of those words.
More sense in another language.
Right? That's so true. So, but I guess, rather than getting caught up on a single word, which I tend to do. I do tend to have this issue. So I'm going to release that for a moment and see if we can get into the nuts and bolts of what like you said, what's the essence of this quote? And I really think it is more around this whole idea of, it's easy. It's easy to look to, success. And again, whatever that means to you, right? Whatever that looks like to you, whatever that is, to kind of use that as a measurement tool, right? Post, for lack of a better word, right? And really, I love the second half of this is because for every time I hit a milestone that I think is success, there is like 10,000 things that kept me wanting to stay in bed that day, right? Or
Right.
whatever that is. And it is really is. I saw a quote on Facebook, and I can't remember who said it or what it was, but it literally was about, some days my biggest success is closing a new client, and some days my biggest success is brushing my teeth. Regardless of where I'm at today, I'm still out here plugging away, doing the things, and I need to honor that. So I think,
and that's where it comes down to resilience. Because I also believe where he was trying to go with this is that, it's very easy to look at, just picture somebody in your mind who to you is successful. And it's really easy to look at where they are and what they are currently doing and what they have created behind them and go, wow, look how great, awesome, powerful, wonderful, influential, whatever other words you want to use. Look how great that person is because of their success. And I really think what he was trying to do here in this sentence is kind of shift that focus. Like, yes, the success is great and wonderful. However, like, we have to recognize and honor the fact that none of that would exist without the resilience. And I think that it makes sense. Like that end result is the really, sexy, attractive story that people want to talk about. Like, it's not as fun to talk about all of the failures that had, or roadblocks that had to occur prior to that success. And I think this helps to, again, shift that focus and bring some normalization to that, that success, however you define that. It's not a linear path.
Wait, time out. Say that again. I seriously, I need everybody to hear this. What did you just say?
Success, however you picture it, is not a linear path.
Oh, right. I think, let's just pause there for a minute, because I think that is so powerful. Like, we have this envision, like, if I do this, then I'll move here and then I'll go here. And the line to success is some sort of like 45-degree angle, right? Like, we're just trucking up the hill, right? But the reality is that we might be trucking up that hill, but there's rock slides and there's all kinds of stuff happening, right? And so we may go up, have a really good week, have a really good month, maybe even a good year, and then the next one isn't quite so, like, we might even backslide a little bit. And so I think that statement, the path is not linear. It's all over the place. It is literally all over the place.
What's most important in that, we shouldn't overly give value to those things, those backsides or barriers or things that oftentimes people will label as failures. Number one, they are going to happen. So if you are thinking, oh, I hope it doesn't happen, you're already setting yourself up for disappointment.
Right? Yes.
I know we've talked about this before, but I am of the philosophy that expects that something will go wrong.
That's right.
Literally, like, leave room in your schedule to put out the fire. And then if there is no fire, then celebrate that. Because one thing that I have learned about life is some shit's always going to come up. Okay. Something's going to happen. There's just the entire world outside of your body
Yes.
is beyond your control.
Right?
And what we do
That's so true.
control is how we react, how we show up, and then how we persevere and move forward despite that obstacle, so that we can get to the ultimate place of where we're trying to go, or at least, we know this is the journey that we want to keep moving forward. And I really think that's where he was going with this quote, is like, yes, success, however you define that, is all well and good, and it is an accomplishment in itself. But really, what's more impressive than that success is the amount of perseverance and resilience that successful person has built up through all of these trials, and getting back up again and figuring out another way despite the obstacle. That piece is more impressive. The success is the byproduct.
Right. I love this. Of course, you know me. I'm about to mention a book, because when we talk about this, I can't help but think about the book is titled The Gap and the Gain, and it's by Dan Sullivan. And the reason that I'm bringing this book up is because the whole premise of this book is that we tend to live in the gap. Well, the gap is between where I am today and where I want to be. And so I focus a lot of time and energy and effort in the gap, right? However, if I shift my focus and I live in the gain, and I focus on where I am versus where I used to be, right? Then I'm finding this path forward with much more confidence and strength and a better mindset, for me anyway. I don't know, that may not be for other people, but I'm just saying that book really gave me some tools in how to shift my mindset around my goals and where I want to go and what it looks like to get there. And and it's one of the reasons, Kayla, literally on Wednesdays, that we start our calls with wins.
Yes.
Because
it really reminds me of that. We've done this quote before, but what you focus on expands.
Yes.
And while there is great value in taking stock of where you are and, analyzing what's working and what's not, of course, we want to make sure that we're focusing all of our resources on the right activities to the best of our ability. We can't allow ourselves to dwell on what we don't have or what isn't working. Like, figure out those pieces. Right? So we can identify them and shift our strategies appropriately, but don't dwell on them, and don't make them mean anything more than data points for what doesn't work.
That's right.
Because and this is one that I've had to learn the hard way over years, but for instance, I'll be a little bit more vulnerable than even I typically am. My husband and I have been together for 10 years now, not married for 10, but together for 10. Mm-hmm. And so that means that I was 22 and he was 25, I guess. What year? Yeah. When we met, we were still getting ourselves figured out. I mean, we always are, but me 10 years ago was very different than me now.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
And one of the things that I used to be really bad about, and I do still have to catch myself and work on, is having that tendency to focus on the negative. And it was just not something that I was really aware of before. I was not brought up with mindfulness or, being conscious of my thoughts and, what you're fueling and whatnot. I was for a very long time, just living in that kind of reactive state that we talk about getting out of all the time. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so my husband, being a different person than I am, with very different approaches to life, there was a lot of things that, you know, I weren't my favorite things about him. He also he has ADHD and time blindness, so time management skills like don't exist. And there's a lot of other life skills that just didn't exist. And that was so challenging for me for the longest time. And I was such in this place of like, why are you like this? And then like I would find myself, maybe some of you can relate. And I would
very possibly.
I would find myself like I would get caught in these loops. And when I would get really fired up, and this wasn't like a day-to-day thing, but when something would happen that would get me really fired up and pissed off with him, it was like my brain found all of the flaws and would fixate on all of the flaws. And I can see it now in hindsight. It was like the more I was attentive to everything that was wrong about him, the more I was attentive to everything that was wrong about him. And it just like continued to fester because I was giving it life and attention in the most negative way. And a simpler way is like there's a phenomenon. There's a title for this phenomenon, but if you're like thinking about buying, I don't know, a blue Volkswagen, and then you'll go out in the world and you'll start noticing them everywhere.
All of the blue Volkswagen.
There's more of them. It's because like your brain is completely overwhelmed by sensory input all of the time. But when you're giving something your focus, it trains your brain, oh, this is what we're focusing on. And then you notice those things more and they seem to be more present, but they're not. You're just, that's what you're focusing on.
Yes. So Rhea, I'm so glad you're here, Rhea, because she said, girl, preach. This is speaking to her soul this morning.
I'm not the only one who's had to learn this lesson.
No, you are not the only one. You are not the only one. And I think that this is why this is so important for me on Monday mornings, right? Is to show up and remember, like, where does my mind need to be in order to best serve and best show up in the world and best show up as my best self?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, and all of that to say, when we focus on the negatives or the gap or the failures, however you want to phrase that, we're going to find more evidence to support those stories that we're telling ourselves, basically. But when we focus on not the amount of distance we still have to travel to where we want to be, but if we focus on how far we have come, how much growth that we have experienced, that is so empowering. And that really puts fuel back in the gas tank to keep going. Of course, you're not where you want to be yet. Right. If you were, well, then you're one step away from death, really, in my opinion. Like, once you get to the first goalpost, you move it. Yes. Like, you're always going to be heading somewhere. There isn't an ultimate destination other than the grave.
That's right. That's right. And that's why we talk about how life is all about, we are lifelong learners. We are lifelong.
Right.
We will never. I was just sharing this with my son the other day. He was like, well, I wish I was here. And I wish I was. And I was like, look, I'm 53 and I still keep moving my goals. I hit a goal and I'm like, oh, that's great. What's the next one? What's the next one? You know, and that's not in a bad way, right? It's in structured way.
Sir Isaac Newton figured this out hundreds of years ago. A body in motion remains in motion. A body in rest remains at rest. So I don't know about you, but I feel most alive and fulfilled when I am in a state of momentum, growing myself, my business, myself as a mother and a wife, as I continue to grow and expand those things. That's what brings me purpose to my life. So even though like I hit this milestone and this checkbox, this goal, okay, great. it doesn't stop there. Like now we're
No,
on to the
right.
next one.
That's
So
right.
there's always all that to say, there's always going to be a gap. There's always
Yes.
going to be the, oh, I haven't done, I haven't accomplished this thing yet. I haven't climbed this mountain, or you climb this mountain, and then you see there's a bigger one over there. Yes,
Right.
that is how life works.
That's
So once
right.
again, as soon as you can get comfortable with that,
Mm-hmm.
then we can shift to, holy shit, did you see how far I have climbed
Right.
just in the past week, month, quarter, year? Like,
Exactly. Right. Or can we see how far, yes, how far we've come, right? I didn't know. Look at all of the things that I know today that I didn't know 2 weeks ago. Right? It's not sometimes I have to learn things from a different perspective, which means sometimes I have to be on the floor and looking up to see them. And while laying on the floor can feel self-defeating sometimes it gives me exactly the perspective that I need to get back up and do what needs to be done. And, so sometimes I think these quotes are really very apropos because, like for example, this one, he says, how many times I fell down and got back up again. And to me, you've heard me say this a lot, like staying in bed is like the epitome of self-defeat for me. And that is truly my litmus test on where I am and what's happening and what do I need to say to myself to get out of bed to face this next day. And when I do that, that's like getting up off the ground, right? I'm getting back up, right? Literally, I feel like that's what's happening. And there are so many things on any given day. I don't know. I can't be alone in that, right? I can't be alone in I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many reasons that I don't want to get out of bed this morning. And then there's
Yeah.
one that motivates me to actually get out of bed, right?
Or
And
so many
that's the
reasons
one.
to quit.
Right. Oh my
To
gosh,
quit
yes.
this. The quitting fantasy. Like maybe I'll
Oh,
just
yes.
stop and go back to getting a job.
Job. Oh, girl, yeah. How many times have we overcome it? I would love to know how many private independent patient advocates, how many times a week, how many times a month do you have that moment of I'm quitting? I think it's become such a regular occurrence in my life that I don't even give it like I would have to like consciously try to count it now. Because I feel like it happens probably once a day for me. I really do. I feel like it happens once a day for me where I'm like, oh,
So
forget
guys,
it.
not only is that normal, but
Yeah.
it actually can be perceived as a sign that you're on the right track. In fact, and if this is something that you struggle with or just something that's been a theme for you lately, I would encourage you to go to YouTube and do a quick little search because Alex Sharfin, I want to say it's episode 157, but that might not be right. Don't quote that. But just search like Alex Sharfin and the quitting fantasy. And he does an episode on that. And that's what he calls it, the quitting fantasy. And he really does a great job of
Love it.
detailing it out. But really his philosophy is that comes from a place of you are pushing your boundaries
Yes.
with your work and you're putting yourself in a place where it's kind of like going to the gym and lifting weights. Like it's really hard at first and you don't want to do it, you want to quit.
Right.
But if you don't quit, you're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and we're building this strength and resilience in other less physical ways in our business. But if you're not constantly challenging yourself, then you're not going to have anything that you daydream of quitting. So while it's uncomfortable, it's actually a great sign that you're on the right track and you are pushing yourself and challenging yourself. The other side of the very same coin, though, is this is one of the reasons why it's so important to know your why and have it boiled down and right in front of you, so that when those little thoughts do come up, because they don't come from your intuition and your sense of self. That comes from the ego brain, the I don't wanna, the toddler brain, the lizard brain.
Yes.
It's not your true inner soul and voice. But when those thoughts come up, they can be loud, and it's really
sometimes they're very loud.
and convincing. I mean, it is your brain, so it has the same access to all of the, memories that you can draw upon for good. But I find it very helpful to have something powerful, easy to leverage, to squish it down. So for me, my why, my work is centered around the statistic that we lose roughly 250,000 Americans every year to preventable medical errors. That's at the core of my business and my purpose of stepping into this world of advocacy. So when those thoughts come up, or I have a challenge, or I'm getting frustrated, or I wanted to quit like 3 weeks ago, first of all, I give myself the space to let those feelings out, because what we're doing is hard, and it's valid to feel that way. So I just want to point that out. I don't judge myself for it. I let it happen. And my husband has actually figured out at this point that he just needs to let it happen too. And Nicole too. She got roped in the last time this happened. I was like, nobody cares. I just need to quit. And I just let myself live in that place. And then I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning and got back on my horse, proverbially, because I remembered people are dying. People are dying, and they need me. Yeah. And that, to me, is more powerful than any fleeting feeling that can run across my brain. And so I'm like, people are dying, and I get dressed and I come back in here.
And I give it another whirl, right?
And every time I do that, I get a little bit stronger, because going back to this, the path to success is not linear. It's really easy to walk on nice, even ground and grass. And you'll get from point A to point B. Well, it doesn't build strength, resilience, character, or any of the things that you need to be able to perform in point B, meaning the success. It's a lot harder to trudge through mud, to slide down the mountain. I also believe that it's necessary. Because if we're looking at somebody who is successful, or we're thinking about what that means for us, that place, while it's elevated and it looks nice, it tends to also come with a lot of weight, a lot of responsibilities, a lot of logistical things that you're managing.
Yeah.
And the only way to get the skill set to be able to carry that weight is to fall down and walk through the mud and climb back up the mountain. Like, these are the ways that the skills are built to be able to show up in that place of success. And that's also kind of what I'm getting from this quote, is like, yeah, sure, being in that place of success, like, that's all well and good. But that it's a byproduct of the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a byproduct of the work.
Does the dog agree?
I'm not even sure. Yeah, I know, right? He said, say it, sister. That's what he said. He said, say that, sister. I heard you. It's funny. I can never tell when you guys can hear the dog. Because he's pretty verbal. But anyway, it is. So it's funny, because I think, again, this whole definition of success comes into play in what we're doing. But I think the important thing is this idea of perseverance, resilience, the ability, the adaptability to pivot and change, and to do things differently, and to not quit. Where's the thing? Here it is. In my notes, I wrote down something. The superpower in this is the adaptability, because this is the statement where this is the moment where you get up the next morning, in your example, Kayla, right? Like, I'm done. I'm the quitting fantasy, the whole thing. Get up the next morning, you remember your why. The answer to that is that I can course correct without quitting.
Exactly.
Like I can change things. I don't have to quit. And that really is a superpower, when we think about it, because we're out of time today, but I think that quitting is the easy answer.
Oh,
And
100%.
it's the grit and the hard stuff. I often say, the things in life with the most return on investment are the hard things.
Mm-hmm.
The things that, anyway, and I don't want to get into that, but just remember this adaptability, this ability to course correct, pivot and change, be flexible and adaptable is a superpower that allows you some relief without having to quit, allows you to continue on in the face of all of these whatevers, barriers, bumps in the road, speed bumps, whatever they are, because they're there. Anyway, final words. We ran through that 30 minutes quick, girl. I don't know
It
how
was
that
good
happened.
though.
Yes, it
So
was.
I challenge you to figure out for yourself this week, what is success for you in the long term? Break it down to 5-year, 1 year, and then next quarter, which is starting, is it next week?
Tomorrow, girl.
See, I do
Tomorrow.
week to week with mine, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tomorrow. I
And
know.
if you're this may turn around and point out the importance of quarterly planning. Obviously, Nicole already hosted Q2 quarterly planning, but she does do 1 hour one-on-one sessions too if you're now feeling the need to get caught up to speed on some Q2 planning. So reach out to Nicole there for support. And figure out where you want to go, write that out. And that will help you to, as you're reverse engineering, figure out what are the barriers in front of you and how you can get around them. So you can do those push-ups and get stronger and find the way to get to where you want to be. And The Gap and the Gain is available on Spotify as an audiobook. I added it to my library. And Alex Sharfin's The Quitting Fantasy is actually episode 114. So a couple more resources for you guys to check out this week.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kayla. And thank you, everyone, for being here. We are so grateful for this community of independent and private patient advocates. We really hope today's quote on perseverance, resilience, and adaptability empowers you in your work and your personal life this week. So be sure to share how you're applying it in your advocacy practice. And we'll see you next Monday for inspiration and talk about self-care. We'll see you next week, guys. Have a good one.